1. Today I'd like to tell you my first experience going to a Comic-Con, and believe me, there was too much cringe for your girl to handle. The characters, me, Yeet Yeet. I'm a small skinny girl with back-length curls, and I've had people tell me that I look Asian before. My bestest friend, Carl, a tall, thick, purple-headed hoe. She loves Doctor Who and Supernatural. Kat, a Filipino exchange student who fell victim to the experience, cute but kinda naive. Neckbeard, bait, and catnip. Dearmood. My other best friend and president of this club I attend, acquaintance of Kat. Krillinbeard. He appears a lot here, and he has an interesting story of his own if you guys want to hear about it. A large, noisy guy with stubs of hair on his chin. I don't think he has a neck, very touchy. From what I've heard from multiple people, he's rude, annoying, and obnoxious. A bit of the background. I've never attended any Comic-Con or Anime-Con ever before. I've had a few opportunities before, but had to turn them down because it's either too expensive, or my family just so happened to be busy that day to take me. I don't own a car either. One day I see posters advertising this upcoming con all around my campus that would take place in no less than 2 weeks. I told Dearmood, and she mentioned this to our club members. The tickets were very, very cheap, so we arranged volunteer drivers to take us to Comic-Con. I really wanted to cosplay as Kale from Dragon Ball, but I only had a limited amount of days to work on it. Plus, I never cosplayed before, so just learning how to sew my own clothes and shit would take me weeks to prepare. Plus, I'm not muscular like her. So, to save money and time, I bought a cheap, long black wig with a Native American costume and went as Pocahontas. Carl went as the newest female Doctor, I think. She got this neat Doctor Who dress from Hot Topic, and wore a blonde wig. She took more time making her costume as she sewed the dress to make it fit her, and styled the wig herself. I mean, she really took her time with it. On the morning of the event, we, along with some old friends and Krillinbeard, were waiting on our rides outside the school building. Krillinbeard pokes fun at our costumes, calling it cheap and tacky, but literally wore an orange shirt with a dot on his forehead, and wrote Krillin on his stomach. For no reason, he tells Carl, "I have every disease known to mankind," for some reason, and acted like it was something to boast about. Whenever he talked to his buddies, he had his voice volume all the way up, which was even worse because he sat right next to us. My eardrums nearly busted from hearing his high-pitched squeals. Before we left, I found out that this Comic-Con had a speed dating event at a certain time. There's different slots and times you can go, but I wanted to go at this one specific time. I mentioned that I would try this event to Carl as softly as I could. I don't know how he picked up, but he told me, in a creepy smile, "First you have to get through the guards." You have to pay up front before you can go for this event. Don't know how he could hear me when his loud-ass voice is masking my soft voice. As we get up and go to our cars, this random Asian chick comes running towards us screaming in a high-pitched squeal, "Ah!" Wearing a schoolgirl outfit, yes, like in the animes. This chick legit came out of nowhere and nearly gave me a heart attack. My first thought was that there was no way she was going to Comic-Con with us, as we never saw her in any club meetings before. Plus, we had this buddy system rule where you needed one more person to accompany you to the con. You cannot be alone during the con. Then she spoke, "Oh my god, I'm so excited for this Comic-Con. I've never been to one before." Then Dearmood came from behind us. Apparently this was an acquaintance of Dearmood and wanted to go with us. Sweet, I thought. But things would take a turn for the worse. You see, even though Kat was Filipino, she looked Japanese, especially since she wore her regular schoolgirl uniform from her old school in Cambodia, complete with a kitty ear headband. The combinations led to total neckbeard bait, and as we all know, the neckbeard thrives in places like cons and anime clubs. It's basically their niche. We arrive early and get there in front of the line, then I ask, "So Kat, do you have a buddy?" She cocked her head to the side in confusion. "What buddy?" Carl says, "Yeah, you need a buddy with you at the con." Kat's eyes widened. "Oh, I did not know." This was very bad and kinda dangerous as her phone only worked back in her hometown and had no signal whatsoever. Plus Deermood was all the way in the back of the line. The car we took arrived early, way before anyone else from our club did, and we couldn't ask if she wanted to take Kat to be her buddy. So we decided that Kat can be in our little buddy system. Yay. This was a small con, so there wasn't much to do but attend some small events and buy some stuff from the stores. But it was still pretty cool. I even got this cute body pillow of Midoriya from Boku no Hero Academia for only $30. And the cosplayers were very nice. Well, some of them are. You see, my dear readers, as I stated previously before, there are a lot of neckbeards, and I have never seen so many fedora-tipping men in my life. But not towards me. Everyone was flopping towards Kat like she was a delicious bag of Doritos. So many men, and only a few girls, asked for photos and hugs and kisses. Luckily, she wasn't really good in English, so she mostly cocked her head to the side and asked them to repeat what they said. This one incident, 2 large men cosplaying as Ryu and Scorpion from Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat came up to us. The guy cosplaying as Ryu asked, "Hey, can we get a photo?" I was thinking finally someone asking us for a photo, and we all got in a pose. He took out his Polaroid camera but shakes his head. "No, not you two." Pointing at me and Carl, "Just a cute Asian chick." I was already depressed because no one was asking me for pictures because everyone flocked to Kat, but nowhere as upset as Carl was. I mean, she spent days and the little extra time she had on her hands to work on her Doctor Who cosplay, only for this scrub to turn us down like that. Needless to say, we were furious, and after the guy took like 5 photos of Kat, I felt like biting his greasy head off. When he was finally done, we took Kat and speed-walked away before the guys could start talking with her. We tried our best to avoid them, but I think they were following us, because whenever I turned my head, I would see them staring at us. In fact, I'm pretty sure either Ryu or Scorpion groped Carl in the ass, as she told me she felt someone pinching her butt as we were walking around the con. Finally, the time slot for the speed dating event was approaching. Both Kat and I were entering the small section for the event while Carl was playing Fortnite in another area. The way they had this speed dating thing was that the females entered first. We sat in these large red stools, and in front of us was another set of stools. Those were for the men, and for every 2 minutes, they would have to rotate and move on to the next one. For the 2 minutes they had, we would have to quickly start a conversation and see if they piqued our interest or not. They also gave us badges with numbers on it so that in the end, the people in charge of the speed dating event would leave these pieces of paper on 2 tables. One for the men's, one for the women's, and have us write our names and email down for the paper that had a number on it. For example, let's say I really liked Goku and his number was 69. At the end, I would look for the paper that said the number 69 and write my number or email. I was smart and lame enough just to give them my Tumblr account. No way they were gonna get my phone number or email even if I liked them. Once the rules were set and done, for girls, if you felt that the guy was being an ass or a creep, you simply pretend to yawn and the people in charge would take them out of the event. I repeated these steps to Kat and emphasized on the yawning part a lot to her. She simply nodded and smiled, but I fear she didn't get that part enough. I was worried because even though she was 18, she looked 14. This creeped me the hell out since the first dude that ran to her spot was a 30-year-old guy cosplaying as Pikachu. I mean, this guy looked like my dad. Some of the dudes were pleasant enough. There was even this Neckbeard, well, he had a beard on his neck, that was super sweet and kind. Most of them joked that I looked more like a Mulan, if it wasn't for my dark skin, than a Pocahontas. Overall, it was pretty swell except for 2 incidents. Somehow, someway, Krillin Beard finds out what time slot I picked, despite only mentioning it to Carl and Kat in the car on the way to the con, and he sits right in front of me. Oh, what joy. I got 1 word in before Krillin Beard rambles on and on and on about how lame the con is and how he hates this one stupid girl that he stalks, and what an idiot she is. This boiled my blood as this girl he was talking about was rather sweet and he just wouldn't shut up. I tried my best to act uninterested, I mean I was, but I was trying to let him know how annoyed I was. I rolled my eyes, turned my head away, tapped my foot, and even did the yawning thing. But I guess the people didn't pay attention. I don't know how the hell Krillin Beard didn't catch up on this, but he continued to talk until it was time to switch. Finally. Not too long after him, another neckbeard appeared. But this one makes me shiver to this day. He was cosplaying as a Jedi and carried his staff around. As he was talking, he kept leaning in and leaning back over and over again, looking at me with those huge-ass eyes I've ever seen. I don't think he even blinked at all. As he was talking, he kept rubbing something for like a minute. As soon as I started to look down, he quickly moved his hand to his staff and began to rub it as hard as he could. My eyes twitched, and I kept leaning to the wall to avoid his head trying to lean closer to me. Then the timer went off and it was done. Those 4 minutes were the longest hours of my life. Well, they felt like hours. Finally, the event ends, and it's time to give our numbers. I give my Tumblr account to a few nice guys, actual nice guys, and hoped that at least one of them would give me theirs. Turns out none of the nice guys, well, except one, but he was okay, gave me their numbers. Instead, the 2 creepy dudes gave me their numbers and Gmail account. In fact, I nearly gave Krillinbeard my account, just because I thought he was another guy's number. Cat, on the other hand, got all the sweet guys, and all the creepy dudes. I was pretty mad, but I also felt sorry for Cat because as soon as we left, the creepy Jedi came up to her and kept asking if she gave him her number. She didn't hear him and ignored him as we walked and attempted to find Carl. She won most of the battles and finally got a few pictures, which makes her happy. As we walked to the bathrooms, Carl mentioned that Krillinbeard was waving his hands in the air, but she ignored him. Cat and I waited outside the bathroom, which is located outside the con and next to the line to go in, waiting on Carl to finish. I don't know what exactly Cat was talking about, but all I heard was, "These panties are really uncomfortable," before raising her skirt and showing me them. My face went white and I immediately said, "Please don't do that, we're in public." I turned and saw that a couple of people in line were staring right at her. Some were even drooling and tried to escape the line. Carl finally gets out and I quickly led Cat and Carl outside. We were already planning to leave and eat out, so it was a good thing we left right after that. During dinner, I asked Cat how was the speed dating event for her. Basically, she said she felt uncomfortable and didn't understand what the guys were saying. I jokingly laughed that Cat couldn't even call those dudes because her phone didn't pick up any signal here. But it might be for the best. After the Comic-Con, we found out from our other friend, we'll call him Pikachu, was stuck with Krillinbeard. From what I've heard, he was embarrassing and loud as usual. It turns out he attempted all the speed dating events, each cost $20 for the guys and $10 for the girls, and tried to give everyone their numbers. Even the lady in front who was in charge of taking money and giving the people permission to enter. They too went out to dinner and ate at this Japanese restaurant. He didn't remember exactly what happened, but this restaurant had these wooden chopsticks, and Krillin was making them use it. When everyone declined, Krillinbeard called the waitress and said, "Can you show these losers how to use chopsticks?" Even the waitress was a bit annoyed with him. Another group from the club also ate at the restaurant. Krillinbeard kept waving at them and making gestures. From what I heard, Krillinbeard no longer showed up to the club, and there's a huge reason for that, but that's another story. We never saw Cat again, but in the end, Carl and I got some neat stuff from the con. 2. I feel like I haven't stressed just how important SJ is to me. Slim Jim, for anyone who's read my prior stories, he's tall, lanky, and the epitome of a good old country boy, and by far the sweetest human being I've ever met. Fiercely loyal to a T, SJ has been by my side through thick and thin, and was always there to pester me about making things official with Spooky. Despite how little I discuss him in my stories, he played a major role in most of them, and it's my fault as a writer for not expressing that enough. With that being said, SJ was not safe from the dreaded bearded ones like Spooky and myself, and SJ has given me permission to share a story for which I was merely an outsider looking in for once. Now on with the bearding. AJ makes a return, the former friend of Jabbabeard. Throughout high school and for a year after, her and SJ were going steady and were quite happy for a while. Until a few months after SJ got into a trade school, and her time with him became increasingly limited. SJ was a busy boy, spending his days at work, at school, or helping his dad in their fields tending crop. And what little free time he did have, he tried spending with me and Spooky as, in his own words, You two dumbasses give me life. AJ took a back burner in his life, and before you think it, no, SJ didn't ghost her. He made it painfully clear that his time was limited and that it would be better for both of them if they put their feelings on hiatus and just remained friends for the time being. At first, AJ seemed to be cool with it, hanging out with the three of us on occasion. But then things started getting, well, weird. Or beard. Anytime the four of us hung out, AJ would cling to SJ like shit on Velcro, always having to touch him in some way, hand-holding, legs touching, etc. SJ didn't seem to mind at first, thinking she just needed some time, until one day when we were all lazily meandering in SJ's backyard one hot autumn afternoon. SJ, do you have anything to drink? I'm sweating more than a hooker in church. Did you take that from Uncharted? Yes, Victor Sullivan is my spirit animal. I thought Liam Neeson was your spirit animal. No, I said Liam Neeson killed my spirit animal. That doesn't make any sense. Point is, I'm fucking hot. Christ.
SJ and I got pretty hot last night, didn't we, babe?
Just right the fuck out of nowhere. We all gave her a puzzled look, but no one looked more surprised than SJ. What? We didn't?
Oh, that's right, I flew solo last night, but I was thinking of you.
Gross. Down, girl. SJ looked at her with a perplexed look on his face, but AJ didn't seem to notice, or she just didn't care.
I've been masturbating to you a lot lately. I miss you.
Red flag, red flag! SJ pulled AJ to the side and started whispering furiously to her. All the while, Spooky and I watched with a mixture of curiosity and pity for SJ, which quickly turned into rage as AJ hauled off and slapped SJ hard across the face. Spooky immediately went into attack mode, pushing AJ to the dirt as I went to make sure SJ was okay. He was livid. Get the fuck off my property before I call the cops on your crazy ass! AJ got up, dirt covering her black leggings, tears welling up in her eyes.
Fine, do whatever the fuck you want. Fuck this little whore for all I care. I'm done with you. With all of you. Rot in fucking hell.
Before any of us could retort, she turned and sprinted towards SJ's driveway. We all stood there, stunned. Well, that was pleasant. Shut it. What was that about? I told her she was out of line, that she was making everyone uncomfortable, and if she couldn't accept just being friends, then it might be better to cut ties. Kinda harsh, man, don't you think? SJ shook his head. This isn't the first time she's done this kind of thing. It started with her trying to sext me, then sending videos of her playing with herself and titty shots and the voicemails. I'm just getting tired of it. He looked heartbroken. Despite my simplification of their relationship, SJ was very fond of AJ. And to come to grips with the fact that he might have to cut her out of his life was hard for him to face. That's when we heard the crash. After a brief moment of staring in the general direction of the sound, all three of us began sprinting toward SJ's driveway. Upon rounding the backside of his house, we came upon a sight all country songs written by disgruntled women aspire to. My best friend's pride and joy, brand new truck that he bought with his own money just that past week, was currently in a bad way. Windows smashed, tires slashed, doors bashed, monster mashed. Well, not that last bit, but his truck was a mess. And there, holding a heavy spade and trowel next to her handiwork, was AJ, breathing heavily, tears and sweat running down her face, red as a devil's scrotum. SJ lost his mind, incoherent roaring mixed with expletives that would make a sailor blush. It seemed to dawn on AJ that she had fucked up, because as soon as she heard SJ, she bolted to her car and peeled out of his driveway. All three of us were livid and urged SJ to call the cops and report her, which he did eventually. That's where I'll end it for now, but there's more to this little tale, and not the last time SJ had to deal with AJ's antics. 3. In my freshman year of high school, I was dating a guy who I had mixed feelings about. He was kind of socially inept and hung around an odd crowd of kids. Nevertheless, he was the only person I had, since I was also socially awkward and not very attractive. Scrawny, frizzy hair, glasses, braces, etc. He was casually misogynistic, as were many of his friends, but they let me hang around them. We had a big lunch table at which I was the only girl. I sat through 25 minutes of rape jokes and video game talk every day, since I would have been lonely as hell without them. My boyfriend was best friends with the ringleader of the table, who I'll call Axel. He was a big Guns N' Roses guy. One day my boyfriend and Axel got into a huge fight. No one knows why, and to this day I couldn't tell you. All I know was that there was a fist fight involved off of school premises, and they were no longer on speaking terms. Our lunch table then had a schism. My boyfriend and I went to another table, things went well enough, and our conversations were a lot more pleasant than they were at the big table. Then things got weird. Axel decided to send intel over to our table in the form of a guy I'll call Sheldon, because he looked, sounded, and acted exactly like the character from The Big Bang Theory. Now, Sheldon wasn't just your average nerd. His daily uniform consisted of slip-on shoes, a comic book t-shirt, and flooding sweatpants with crusty white stuff all over them. I really hope it wasn't what I think it was. His hair was so thin and greasy that it looked wet, and he was so pale that his skin was practically translucent. He was really into communism, to the point that it was all he talked about. I'm all for democratic socialism, but he was obsessed with communism in that privileged white boy edgelord sort of way. It was basically his only personality trait. His behavior was also appalling. He would make dicks out of his food, jump on the table and rub his ass all over it, and make misogynistic comments constantly. He called me every demeaning name you could possibly call a woman: bitch, slut, whore, cunt, you name it. He also took to throwing whatever objects he had in his lunch at me. I asked my boyfriend multiple times to defend me or call school security, but he never did. I felt completely defenseless. So I decided to look elsewhere for help. Axel had a girlfriend who was cool and tough. I'll call her Astrid, because she really loved the How to Train Your Dragon movies. Astrid was a fencer who was almost 6 feet tall. She had broken a kid's nose just the year before for flirting with her, so people did not mess with her. Astrid and I had some connection because my boyfriend was previously Axel's best friend. I was really fond of her and thought she might be able to take Sheldon out for me. Turns out she wasn't. She took Axel aside because Sheldon was his minion. I gave up and begged my boyfriend one last time to go back to Axel's lunch table so we wouldn't have to deal with Sheldon harassing me anymore. He said if I wanted to I could, but he wouldn't be coming along and I could consider our relationship over. The stress of a breakup and the loneliness that would result was far too much for me, so I decided to just put up with his antics for the rest of the year. The winter months dragged on, but I made it to second semester of my freshman year. Sheldon's horrific behavior got worse and worse. One day he started saying the N-word repeatedly. I was extremely uncomfortable, but didn't know how to ask him to stop. Fortunately, someone must have heard my silent pleas to knock him into tomorrow. Our school was 50% black, and we had little tolerance for racism. A kid from the table next to us picked up a chair and heaved it at him, clocking him full on. He tried to act as if he wasn't rattled for it, but I could tell he was choking back tears. At the end of the lunch period, he ran over to Axel to report the daily intel from our table, and told him about the chair incident. Sheldon begged him to let him come back to his table and not be his little spy anymore. After that, he never sat with us at lunch again. That was just the beginning of my interactions with Sheldon. 4. Let me tell you the story of the neckbeardy dude at my college, who basically proposed to me after 3 months of barely being acquaintances. The main characters in this story are me, the neckbeard who I will call Tennisbeard, and 2 friends I will call KR and AZ. Minor details changed to protect the innocent. So I'm on a club team at my college, of which Tennisbeard, KR and AZ and I were all members. And we were all cool with each other, though I was much closer with KR and AZ. Me and AZ even dated briefly, which Tennisbeard was not aware of. Anyway, because KR and Tennisbeard were best friends, I think he saw that as a way to get close to me. At the time, I was literally the only girl in a club team of about 20 guys, so this wasn't uncommon or offensive to me by itself. Tennisbeard, for context, is about a head shorter than me, a 5'7" girl, slightly chubby with glasses. Not trying to knock anyone for their looks, but I wasn't attracted to him, nor was his personality all that amazing. He was very polite in a fairly non-creepy way, although he did decide the one and only way to relate to me was either teaching me tennis shots or trying over and over to talk to me about The Matrix, a movie I told him many times I had never seen. "I can't believe you would want to miss such a fine film," and the like. Anyway, after we had some okay conversations over Messenger, he decided it was time to confess his undying love to me, though seemed to accept it when I rejected him. Then he asked me out for more times over the next 3 months. He even went so far as to randomly show up at my work unannounced and ask the front desk to see me. It raised some questions and was just plain weird, especially since I don't know how he knew my hours. After that, things started to get weird. He asked me out another time, saying he was just so deeply in love and needed me so much. I also told him I didn't like him like that, and I never would. He responded to this by asking me to play singles next practice, and literally pelting me with tennis balls. Like, he was literally aiming for my head. It was beyond embarrassing, and everyone could tell I was pissed and he was bitter. He clearly felt bad and decides he needs to make it up to me. Which brings us to part 2. KR, Tennisbeard's best friend at the time and one of my close friends, tells me the next practice that he knows Tennisbeard can be an immature jerk, but that he's a really nice guy, obviously, and I should at least stay civil on terms for the good of the club. I agree, and KR gets Tennisbeard to invite over to his apartment with a few of the guys to hang out and celebrate KR's birthday. It goes pretty well and all until I commit what is apparently a grave sin. Get ready. I bought my friend a birthday cake. To be exact, it was a lemon meringue pie. All the guys are from another part of the world, so I got something cool they'd never seen before. They loved it, though they ate it with spoons from the middle instead of slicing it. Should have been more clear. Anyway, Tennisbeard spent the rest of the afternoon sulking in the corner. Apparently he later told KR that he had been being so good to me, and I wouldn't even give him the time of day to watch The Matrix with him. So I obviously had an unfair crush on KR, who had not even tried because I wanted to give him a nice birthday. Obviously because of this I was a stupid flirty slut as well. Also in his mind, apparently I actually was totally head over heels for him, and me flirting with KR, that has never even close to happened, was me playing hard to get, and it was obvious I liked him. He then asks me out again and I say no, and several days after this rejection gets pissed because I don't want to meet his mother either. The next week we're heading over to a friend's for a movie night. Tennisbeard offers me a ride because it's nighttime, which I politely decline because a friend's place is within walking distance, and I'm going with a large group of trusted male friends. However, I did end up taking a ride with AZ because he needed to move his car anyway, to avoid a parking ticket and wanted company. I didn't even give it a second thought. That night I get a text from him that I'm unfaithful to him because I took a ride with AZ. Naturally, I'm pissed, so I tell him so. Then, in the most attractive and dignified way possible, he completely loses his spine and profusely apologizes, saying that it's his fault, him being too jealous, and I can hang out with whoever I want. And please, please don't leave him because he needs me. Dude, if you're going to be an asshole, at least be a man about it. Not saying apologizing is wrong, but it was clear he didn't mean it. He then tells me that I need to listen because he's 25, I'm newly 20, and isn't looking to fool around. He's looking for a wife to bear his children. So I didn't answer. The next morning I wake up at 11, it's a Saturday, don't judge, to find texts going back to 8 AM, and he's waiting outside my dorm to talk to me. After angrily negotiating and freaking out for about an hour, and him saying, "Hurry, it's cold outside," many times, I run and speed down the stairs in my PJs looking a mess and out the front door. I was pissed. What right do you have to make me feel like I can't leave my own dorm? I must have looked like a coming storm because on my way out, the desk girl saw who I was aiming at and tried to stop me. My roommate followed me out with a granola bar to watch. Casual as anything. Love her. To get straight to the point, he was holding some flowers he bought me which weren't even the kind you're meant to give people, They were the kind you plant in the ground. Anyway, I shouted obscenities at him for about 5 minutes straight and just left him on the stairs. He sent me a text saying,
"Sorry, I didn't know you were mad. And you love someone like I do. You don't notice things like that."
Whatever, blocked. Found out later from KR that he had this whole plan to stay in the US and to try to get me to date and ultimately marry him. Also sad about the dorm incident, basically.
"What's she freaking out about? I didn't touch her or anything."
KR promptly broke off the friendship forever. Told me in his culture, saying that much about a girl was beyond shocking. Tried to keep it quiet, but the story spread like wildfire. Told AZ in the library, and had to stop him from shouting and making a scene, and convince him to not kick Tennisbeard's ass. That's the story of Tennisbeard. Hope you enjoyed this creepy, cringy saga, and that I got through just how neckbeardy his vibe was. 5. As Spooky and I were talking the other night, she brought up a story I'd very nearly forgotten about. And it only happened 3 years ago. Either dementia is setting in early, or I've repressed this memory. Either way, it's definitely pretty funny, even if a little bit cringy. Most of you lovely listeners who have heard my previous stories might have guessed that Spooky loves anything geek. She's a fantastic artist, her dream is to draw comics, and loves any excuse to dress up. For years she'd been asking me to attend a con with her that was located 3 hours from where we lived at the time. And for years something would always come up that prevented me from going. Work, class, family stuff, laziness, you name it. Well, this particular year I didn't have any feasible excuse, so I agreed to go, much to Spooky's delight. The day of the con I picked Spooky up, her dressed as a blue suit Samus from Metroid, and me as Simon Belmont from the Castlevania games. We were going retro, complete with spear and whip. Don't worry about why I have a whip. And away we went. In all honesty, I had more fun on the drive up to the convention center than I did at the actual con. 3 hours alone with Spooky, just enjoying each other's company, was always a win in my book. Fast forward the 3-hour drive to the actual con, and Spooky was in her element. She was zipping around to all the different stands, chatting to fellow artists, buying any kind of memorabilia she could get her mitts on, and just having a ball. While I wasn't having the best time, I sure as hell was enjoying watching Spooky's eyes light up whenever she saw something from a comic, show, or a movie she loved. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't leave without some retro horror trinkets and a few Star Wars figures. After an hour and a half of browsing the impressive selection of geek porn, Spooky and I found ourselves at a pretty out-of-the-way comic book stand, portraying a few original works by the man running the stand, as well as some well-known additions from DC and Marvel. The dude was a collector, that much was obvious. However, what wasn't obvious was just how much of a stalker he would turn out to be. As far as descriptions go, in the politest terms, CB was not a healthy boy, overweight, mid-30s or 40s, I couldn't really tell, bald with a goatee-mustache combo, wearing a black Punisher shirt that was several sizes too small. The poor skull was stretched so much it was starting to look like the Goodyear blimp. Spooky was eagerly poring over a series of Hellboy and Spawn comics that she'd never seen. All the while, dude was poring over the attractive girl in the skin-tight blue suit he'd never seen. Occasionally his eyes would flit over to me, trying to gauge my role in the attractive female's life. Boyfriend, brother, overprotective guy friend? Poor homie didn't know, but it seemed after a while it didn't matter when Spooky asked him a question. "How much for the Seed of Destruction comic?" Her voice was eager and bubbly, and I knew right away CB was going to take that as flirty. And what do you know, I was right.
"I usually charge about $15, but for special customers I can knock a little off."
Is it possible for someone's voice to sound greasy? Because his voice was greasy. What was worse is that he was using that tone of voice he would use when talking to a small child, but with extremely creepy undertones. Spooky's not stupid, she knew this guy was a creep, but Spooky also likes saving money, so... And what do you mean by special? Her voice sounded innocent, but I saw an all-too-familiar glint in her eyes that made me smile. CB was unaware of the imminent danger, and went full steam ahead.
"Oh, for extra good little girls. I can be quite reasonable with my prices. Would you be interested in, say, discussing things in a more private setting?
CB's voice still had that cringy tone, and he began licking his lips, eyes bulging as Spooky leaned forward a little, pressing her generous boobs together right at eye level to CB, which was an impressive feat considering how short she is, and really laying on the charm. Oh, but I really want it now. Can't we work something out? CB was practically perspiring at this point, hands fidgeting as he was face to face with possibly the only non-virtual boobs he'd ever seen this close. He decided to go for broke and give Spooky a leering smile, which I'm sure he must have thought was seductive, and said,
If you're a really good girl and show me what you're hiding under that suit, you can have the comic.
Spooky looked around, hand to her mouth, feigning the shocked little girl routine. Here? In public? What if someone sees? Spooky bit her lip, toying with the zipper of her jumpsuit. CB looked like he would begin salivating, hands still twisting around themselves. Spooky began lowering the zipper ever so slowly, agonizingly so. CB's expression getting more and more eager, like his head was just going to explode at any moment. Whether I mean his top or bottom head, I'll leave for you to decide. Well, okay. As long as no one else sees.
I promise. Don't worry, baby girl. This'll be our little secret.
His eyes were bulging as Spooky zipped down just below her boobs, holding the jumpsuit together with her hands. Slowly she spread her hands, showing the man what was there. Are they everything you hoped for, mister? She said sweetly, but CB's face became crestfallen, as in place of the luscious boobs he'd been planning to see, there was a black t-shirt with the word tits emblazoned across the chest, in shiny metallic red. Spooky and I collectively lost our shit, laughing to the point of tears as CB looked up at us furiously.
Laugh it up, you stupid cunts.
Did you see the look on your face? It was like a 5-year-old finding out Santa doesn't exist. Come on, man, you can't actually thought I'd flash my tits for a comic book. That's just dumb. CB apparently didn't have much of a sense of humor, and grabbed the bottle of Fanta sitting beside him and threw it on Spooky before storming off. Spooky and I stood there stunned for a moment before laughing even harder. After Spooky finished washing herself off in the ladies' room, and we had exhausted ourselves geeking out, we were headed home. Still laughing at the man who saw tits, just not the ones he was expecting. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 20. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And a special shout out to Spooky and Big Irish Guru for once again saving the day and making this week's video possible. Well, currently it is 4 PM, more or less, on a Friday. Gonna get these videos made. There may be a live stream at some point over the weekend, unless I've already done it, in which case I hope you enjoyed it. Because I don't know when I'm doing it. Might even do it tonight when I'm done, we'll see. Or I might save it for Saturday. Or Sunday, we'll see. Anyway, okay, so I'm gonna go finish these videos off, and then we'll see what's what. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.